What's up everybody? So in this video we're going to be doing some questions on the topic of 9.1. So this is everything related to the xylem and transpiration essentially, okay? So let's just get started. What is transported in xylem tissue? So basically to answer this question we need to know exactly what the xylem is. So the xylem is a little pipe located inside a plant that's job is responsible for sucking up water from the roots and transporting it to the rest of the plant. Okay, so taking water from the roots, like water and minerals, so some water and minerals from the roots and taking it all the way up to the leaves and the rest of the plant so that those places can have water and nutrients to survive. Okay, so that's the main role of the xylem. Okay, so is it A, sucrose from leaves to fruits? No, they're saying transporting from the leaves to fruit, so leaves downwards to wherever there's a fruit. But we know this is not the job of the xylem. This would rather be the job of the phloem. Okay, the phloem. And you learn about the phloem in 9.2, okay? So maybe you don't know about it yet at this point. Now, B, starch from the leaves to the storage organs. So again, this is what the phloem does, not what the xylem does. Water from the roots to the leaves. So this makes sense because we're talking about water from the roots all the way up towards the leaves. So this one makes sense. This is the main job of the xylem. So we're probably going to go with C, okay? But let's eliminate and make sure it's not this last one. Salt from soil to the roots. So now they're saying salts from the soil into the roots. So the xylem doesn't move stuff from the soil into roots. It moves stuff from the roots up towards the plants, right? Because the xylem is not in contact with the soil directly. It is inside the roots though, okay? So it won't be D. It's got to be C. Okay, now moving on to the next one. Transpiration is affected by abiotic factors. Which condition causes the least, keyword least, transpiration? So some keywords is transpiration. What is transpiration? So transpiration is basically, if we come back to this image, you know how water is taken up by the xylem and transported to leaves. Transpiration is essentially the word to describe sweating in plants. So eventually when this water is transported up by the xylem to the leaves, some of it will get sweated out, just like it happens in humans, right? We drink water, but some of it we sweat out. So they're asking you now, that transpiration, the sweating process of plants, is affected by abiotic factors. Abiotic just means factors not related to the plant itself. So external factors. So for example, abiotic factors would mean, basically abiotic means non-living factors. So factors such as, external factors such as sunlight, wind, humidity, things like this. This is abiotic factors. So they're saying the sweating process is affected by abiotic factors, and we know they include heat and all these things that I just mentioned. It's the same in humans, right? When it's very warm, we sweat more. Same with plants and things like that. So which condition causes the least transpiration? Can it be A? So first, I'll show you here. Here's a little diagram I made in my teaching video. You can see here, this is a stoma. A stoma is a structure on the leaf of a cell where the plant sweats from. It's kind of like the sweat gland of a plant. So you can see here, there's water that leaves through this little hole here. And you can see these conditions here on this side increase transpiration, makes the plant sweat more. You can see here, this picture, more water is leaving. So warm temperature, a high temperature, low humidity, and windiness. All these three will increase transpiration. So the exact opposite things will decrease transpiration. So let's go one by one and double check that we know this. So again, least. So high humidity because there's less evaporation. Okay, so high humidity means this. Let me show you. So here we have a plant, a very simple version. So the soil, water, we have the xylem, and then we have finally the sweat gland. And we can see humidity means that there's a lot of water in the air. It's like this. And we know when there's a lot of water in the air, this means that the water from the stoma doesn't want to leave because it's so crowded already. It's traveling against the concentration gradient, right? It's too much. right? But if there's low humidity, so a lot less of these waters, then there's a lot of space for this water to exit into, and so transpiration will be increased. So what we can say is that, in fact, humidity will decrease transpiration. So let's see if that's what the question said. High humidity will do least transpiration because there is less evaporation. That's true. Less of the water will evaporate because the surrounding air is already crowded with water. Okay, so we know it's going to be A, but we got to eliminate the rest. So high light intensity because there is more photosynthesis. Okay, so high light intensity means this. Let me show you. So normally, during the nighttime, let me show you, during moon time, this stomata is closed. Notice there's no hole. So with light intensity, so say for example the sun comes out, what happens now is the sun rays trigger this stomata to open, and now water can leave. So during nighttime, this stomata is closed and no water can leave. On the contrary, during the daytime, or as the light intensity increases, this stomata will open and transpiration will happen more. So this one is wrong because in this condition, high light intensity, there will be more transpiration, not less, not least. Okay, now C is saying fast air movement because there is more evaporation. Okay, so what happens is, with fast air movement, so say there's a big wind, wind will basically move all these air droplets that are in the air surrounding the plant move away. So it's essentially going to move a lot of these airdrops away. The wind is going to push it away. And guess what? If the wind pushes a lot of these airdrops away, then there's now a concentration gradient, and these water molecules have space to evaporate and actually transpire from the plant. So in fact, fast air movement will increase transpiration, okay, because it removes the humidity from the surrounding environment, creating a concentration gradient for the water to evaporate more easily. Okay, so how about D? High temperature because water evaporates quickly. So we know high temperature causes you to sweat more, right? Water will leave your body more quickly. So that's the same in plants. So it's definitely not D. High temperature will increase transpiration, doesn't make the least transpiration. Oh, sorry. So yeah, it is A. It's definitely A. Next one. So which process and cause are responsible for water uptake by the roots? Okay, so this is how it works. You can try the question obviously by yourself, but let me go to the image. So here we have roots and here we have water. How does this water get into the roots? What makes it move there naturally? So what makes it move there is that the roots are full of salt, are very concentrated. So pretend this is salt from what I'm putting right here, okay? So it's very concentrated with salt. Now, if it's very concentrated compared to the outside, so let's say it's half as concentrated, let me move this, oh, schnitzel. Let's say it's half as concentrated in the soil as what it is in the roots. So of course, if it's very concentrated in the roots, then the water will move by osmosis to try and even out the concentration gradient, right? So because the roots are more concentrated with solute, the water will move automatically by osmosis to even out the concentration gradient, and that's how we get some water into the roots, and then the xylem will take it up to the rest of the plant. So which option here provided that? So simple diffusion, no, it doesn't move by simple diffusion, because simple diffusion means it moves down its concentration gradient, and water doesn't move by osmosis. Water doesn't move by simple diffusion. Molecules do, like small solutes. So simple diffusion doesn't apply to water. So it's got to be B, C, or D, because water moves by osmosis. Now, what would the cause be? Solute concentration in the root is greater than in the soil. That's what I just said. When the solute concentration is higher in the root than in the soil, then water will move automatically by osmosis to even out this concentration gradient. So it's going to be B. All the other options is saying the, this is even cohesion. I didn't even notice. I thought this is osmosis. No, this is cohesion. This is not even close to the right answer. So the only option was between B and C, but C here for the cause is saying the exact opposite thing as B. So it's got to be B. Okay, here's a similar question. Excessive irrigation. So irrigation means watering a plant. So excessive watering of a plant can cause increased salinity in the soil. What effect does this have on water transport in the plant roots? Okay, so what they're saying is, for some reason, when you water plants too much, you get a high concentration of solute in the soil. And this makes, let's go back to it. So they're saying excessive irrigation can cause increased salinity. Salinity means water with salt in. So you have a higher amount of salt in the soil, okay? A higher salinity. Salinity means salt in water, okay? So you have more salt in the soil now. Now, what effect does having more salt in the soil have on water transport in the plant roots? So what essentially does this effect have? When you give too much water, you're going to have more of these salt things, and that's going to make what happen? That's going to make it very difficult for water to go into the root, because right now it's trying to stay here to even out this concentration gradient. It doesn't want to move inside the root because the concentration of the solute is not that high there, so it doesn't really want to move by osmosis, okay? So it will decrease the movement of water from the soil to the root. Yeah, that sounds right. So again, this I think is actually quite a tricky question. A lot of keywords you don't understand or haven't heard of maybe. So it is a tricky question, this one for sure. So B, absorption of water with a higher solute concentration. No, this is not true, because you wouldn't, just because the water has more solute now doesn't mean it will still move in. It wants to stay here, so you won't get water with more solute. It just simply wouldn't move. It wouldn't move as much as before. Okay, and this is C is saying the opposite of A, and then D is saying the opposite of B. And we know B is not even close to correct, so D is also not correct. So it's got to be A. Again, the IB likes to give some weird options sometimes that are not even really related or really doesn't make sense to fit with the question. And they do that on purpose to try and trick you sometimes. So sometimes you're not supposed to understand one of the options. They're not supposed to make sense. Sometimes they're really trying to trick you to make sure you understand what is related to this topic in the first place. Okay, so last one here. Which abiotic factors? So again, we come up with this word. Abiotic meaning non-living factors, including wind, temperature, all this stuff. Which abiotic factors affect transpiration, again, sweating in plants? So already remember I showed you there are all these things. Heat, humidity, and wind are the main things you need to know about. So let's see what they say. So they're saying temperature, humidity, and wind. Yeah, that's the three we learned about. So probably it's going to be A. Why not B? pH. It's because they're mentioning pH and salinity. And these two are not any that you've learned about that are important. Okay, so B is not the answer. Same with C, again, because pH is not a key factor. And here D, again, because salinity is not a key factor. Light is a key factor, but just because pH is here, C is not correct either. So it's got to be A. Okay, so that's cool. Do you notice the questions are gonna start repeating? They already repeated this kind of question with abiotic factors and transpiration. And I'm gonna make another video, a part 2, that I'm gonna do 5 more questions, and you'll notice the questions start becoming very, very similar. If you do enough questions, eventually no questions will surprise you, and your test will be really, really a breeze, very straightforward.